Hey folks, I am Johnny from WEX and we are in Marrakech in Morocco with the Fujifilm X100VI compact fixed lens camera. This camera is the latest in the X100 lineup with many features that photographers will find familiar to them if you know the series. It has the fixed lens 23mm f2 Mark II lens, which is really clear, and this model has a boost in resolution up to 40 megapixels. But first, let's have a chat about this lens. Fujifilm brought in the 23mm f2 Mark II in their last model, last version of this camera, the X100V, and it was celebrated as a much sharper optic. So that means that when you're shooting closer, you get much sharper image detail. And now with the boost in resolution, we're really able to see this lens shine. Because this is a Fujifilm X series camera, it has an APS-C size sensor, so for every analog film photography lover, the equivalent focal length is the same as using a 35mm lens. We're here in Marrakech to test out this camera as a travel and street photography camera. It's pocketable, it's great, and it's quite discreet for walking around busy streets and slipping through unnoticed as a photographer, but also delivering fantastic image quality. As we're in Marrakech, this scene is beautiful, but we are in or at the edge of the desert, and I think there are some camels around, so let's go and have a look there. We're here at the Badi Palace. The architecture is beautiful, but we've just noticed these stalks behind us. We were taking some pictures, obviously, of the architecture, and these really wide vistas lends itself to the 23mm lens, but the detail of birds landing and nesting on the rooftops, less so for a wide-angle lens. What we've realized is that the 40 megapixel sensor lets you crop in so much more, so we've got that latitude. Or if you want to compose with that framing in the viewfinder using the EVF, what I've been using is the electronic zoom function, where you use the control ring on the lens and that can punch into 2 steps of crop. And you can see that in the viewfinder, and it gives you effectively 3 focal lengths to work with instead of 1. The X100VI has a new AI algorithm for advanced subject tracking. It's got face and eye detection, which is selectable at the touch of a button on the top of the camera. As we've come to expect, it's got single point, it's got zone, and it's got tracking AF. You can set it to all points selected so that you can just kind of lock onto whatever subject it thinks is best. Worth mentioning, as we are standing in a garden in the rain, is that the body is weather sealed apart from around the front element. You can adapt that with a filter attachment that you can add on, but out the box, it's perfectly weather sealed for me to hold like this, but I'm not going to take a picture staring up to the sky. What I found when shooting with this camera is that the AF it's a little bit sensitive because you can touch screen your AF point on the back. I found that often I'd bring the camera up to my eye and the AF point wasn't where I wanted it to be. That is something that you can fine tune, so you can turn off the touchscreen detection. The joystick is what I'm used to using, so I would use that to select my AF point, and you can customize it. If you want to use the screen and not the joystick, again, you can disable the joystick. So you've got that adaptability. And let's show off some examples on the screen of how well the AF has been working for us.
One of the things that's really exciting about the X100VI is that it's perfect for street photography, and whilst our filmmaker is absolutely dying in the rain, we are having a wonderful time capturing some beautiful reflections, the colours, the vibrancy and the smoke. So I wanted to show you what this camera can do for street photography, because I know a lot of you are really interested in it. So let's go through the markets and we'll see what we can find. Now, this is a really important moment to address something we haven't massively covered, although Johnny mentioned it earlier, in that the camera itself is weather sealed, and that is fantastic. But the front element is not. And so in weather like this, if you're shooting down or you're shooting sideways, that's not a problem. But if you're trying to angle upwards, that's where you're going to find some problems. Now, all that being said, the photos are beautiful and the low light quality is really working for me. So it's quick, it's capturing a lot really easily. The focus is not having any trouble at all, even though I'm moving with massive speed through the market, and all the smoke looks beautiful. So I'm going to get some more and then we're going to talk to you about low light shooting.
The X100V, the predecessor to the X100VI or the X100VI, has a base ISO or a lowest ISO of 160. This camera has reduced the base ISO to 125, which is it's a film standard, 125 ISO. If you're shooting in really bright environments, then that means that you can drop the ISO so you can control your exposure a little bit better. We don't have that luxury at the moment. It's really, really raining. We've got the camera front cap covered up so we can shoot this shot in the rain. But if you wanted to get those low ISO 125 ISO shots, the tool that you have in your arsenal now is the 6-stop IBIS on this camera. You can keep your ISO low and you can push your shutter speed down and you can hold the camera steady. And the IBIS is really, really strong. We've tested it out when you're in environments like this where we have, we have daylit shots, but we also are going inside and it's much, much darker. To be able to handhold and not have to ramp up the ISO because there's so much detail here. You don't want to push the ISO and get noise in all of those details. You want to keep the ISO as low as possible so you've got really nice smooth details and as much sharpness as possible. So that combination of low ISO and image stabilization is a great benefit for a lot of shooting scenarios where you want that details. We've got some pictures in the Medina where that allowed us to shoot under quite low light with lots of smoke and lots of noise around. And with the rain, we got beautiful reflections on the ground. So yeah, we're thankful that the rain came and we're going to keep on exploring. So you might be wondering what are the main improvements of this camera over its predecessors, and one of the significant improvements is a boost in resolution. It now has a 40 megapixel X-Trans CMOS sensor, which will deliver incredible detail. It's got the same lens on it, but the resolving power of that sensor should reveal much more detail. We're going to try out some close-ups here in this Museum of Architecture in Marrakech. This canopy overhead is giving a beautiful warm light. It is also cutting out quite a lot of light, so it's going to be not only a test of the image resolution of all of these tiles here, but also just how good the IBIS is in stabilizing this shot, and then we'll see if we can punch in to all of these tile details later. That is really crisp, and that's at f2. I mean, it's dark in here, so I'm shooting at f2. Luckily, the rooftop's a long way away, so I've got good depth of field. But there is incredible detail from the top to the bottom there. A little bit softer, it gets into the real shadows right at the top, where that ceiling is lit.
I am at the Gimbal El Fnar. It's the main square in the middle of Marrakech. It's absolute chaos, so I'm going to make this quick. But I need to tell you about the video capabilities of this camera. On the upper end of the resolution, you have 4.6K up to 60 frames a second, and you have 6.2K at up to 30 frames a second, which is actually really, really good. If you want to shoot really slow-mo, you can go full HD up to 240 frames a second. These days, nowhere in the world is letting you use a gimbal when you're out and about run and gun shooting. To have IBIS, 6 stops of IBIS in this camera has been an absolute dream because I don't have to go around with a gimbal. I can walk steady, handheld, and then get really cinematic, steady shots. Picture profile-wise, you've got, of course, Fuji F-Log, which is going to give you lots of dynamic range to be able to grade afterwards, which I've really liked. Who would I say it's for in terms of filmmaking and the video specs? It's lightweight, it's compact, it's modular, it's inconspicuous, you know, it's not going to stand out. And I think it's got an incredible set of video specs that are going to be really handy for content creators.
So sadly, we are coming to the end of our time here in Morocco. We've come out to the Agafay Desert, one, because it's beautiful and we wanted to see the sunset, and two, because we're ready now to tell you what we thought of this powerful little Fuji body.
I mean, I've really enjoyed using it. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'm familiar with the X100 system, and this hasn't disappointed. We've been in some challenging and really close situations, and one thing I would say is in the tight confines of the Medina in Marrakech, the 35, you had to work to make it work, but that's good practice in photography. It's something that I quite enjoy. It's a challenge that I step up to.
It absolutely is, and I think the thing that really showed me how much I loved Fuji, or reminded me how much I loved Fuji, was just the speed that it can shoot at. So we were shooting in torrential rain, through busy markets with bikes coming from all over the place, people who really didn't love having their picture taken. And I could walk through and click a button as I walked and just keep moving, and the pictures were super sharp. There is a fixed lens on the body. And so what that means is that you are on a 35, or the equivalent of a 35, whenever you're shooting. Now, I loved it. I love film cameras, I love analog. It was a wonderful challenge to go back to having a 35mm, but there will be pictures that I couldn't get. And so that's something to consider when you're looking at something like the X100VI versus the Fujifilm X-T3, 4, 5, etc.
But that's why I really enjoyed the fact that because of the high resolution, you can crop in, and there's 2 steps of crop in, and that's directly accessible via the control dial on the lens, so I use that quite a lot to get some tighter framing.
Yeah, and usually this is where our filmmaker comes in to tell us what he thought about video. But the truth is that this camera is a wonderful street and travel camera that you can then use for content creation. And so even if you're not a pro filmmaker, but you want to start a TikTok channel or an Instagram channel, and you're interested in talking to people about street photography or about your street and travel photography, the video capability is fantastic. Let's talk about the body, because I fell in love again with Fuji when I picked this up. You've got the classic Fuji system in that everything you need is very close to where you need it. So just with my thumb and my index finger, I can change the aperture, the ISO, and I can do that incredibly quickly whilst I'm shooting. So if you're being discreet and you're walking through markets, it's so much easier to walk inside and just flick the button in order to make it lighter or darker, to adjust your settings, and basically just to give you a lot of an easier changeover. I don't know what you thought of that.
Yeah, I'm very used to shooting analog, so the aperture control, the shutter speed, being able to set your ISO, you know, shooting with the Sony 16 rule is my go-to really for any camera. And then you've got additional things like focus tracking and kind of the AI subject detection, which gives you those tools if you need it. But if you just want to shoot kind of, you know, pure analog style photography but get a load of digital files that you can then share really easily, then that's available with this. Lovely.
Absolutely. You have the classic flash port on top. This was the same on the X100V, and a lot of people like that for street photography. You have one memory card slot in the bottom, and you have your battery. The only thing I would say we noticed is that the battery runs out a little quicker than on other cameras, and so you do want to make sure that you have a spare when you're out and shooting. although really that's kind of a rule I follow regardless of what camera I have.
Yeah.
It charges through camera, which is a great thing because obviously nowadays you want to be able to power bank it at a restaurant whilst you're on the move, if that's what you're doing. And it's got all the classic features the old camera had.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it wasn't so comfortable in my hand. And I know that Fuji do make, there are accessories that go onto the hot shoe that give you just something more to hold on with your thumb, and that would make it quite a bit more comfortable.
So in terms of weight, as you would expect from a compact camera, it is light, it's pocketable as long as you have big enough pockets, as we found out. But it's easy to just pop it in a tote bag or to pop it in your pocket and just keep walking. The price point is about £300 more than the predecessor at the time of making this video, which honestly, with the video capabilities improved and the megapixels being what they are so that you can crop in further, I think is worth the price point.
That boost in resolution and the image stabilization is a real game changer. The hurdles that you had to jump over if you were shooting in low light have really been kind of got past by adding that IBIS. It feels just like any other X100 camera. I know that they did increase the body size for the flip out screen on the X100V. There was concern, there was talk about whether or not they'd have to increase it more for the IBIS. It's not in any way noticeably bigger. We were able to pocket it in the rain. We could get it into a raincoat pocket easily.
That is true, and I do think it's worth addressing, and this is always really controversial, so obviously let us know what your opinion is in the comments. But it is a flip out screen in terms of it comes up and out rather than a fully articulating screen.
Oh, that's a good point.
And not everyone loves those. This guy.
There was a lot of kind of vertical compositions where the flip out screen wasn't the best for that.
But obviously,
but if you are shooting landscape, you can shoot from the waist. It's kind of medium format style, which is really lovely. But yeah, a lot of the stuff was very kind of tall and thin. Marrakech seems to be built for Instagram, so yeah, that would have been something that we'd liked, but it would have added bulk.
True.
And people want this to be a small and pocketable camera.
That is true.
Yeah.
Now, as always with Fujifilm, the colour science did not fail. With the rain, the neon lights and the low light, every picture we got was pretty much gold dust, and I'm sure the guys are completely fed up of me taking a picture in the rain and saying, this is the best shot I've ever taken.
There were a lot of good reflections. It was fantastic. The Real Ace film simulation mode is meant to be very, very true to life. So if you just want, smooth tones, accurate skin representation, and the colours that you're seeing, it's really fantastic. They brought it in the GFX range, and that's now available within the X100.
And finally, and this is the thing that all of you have probably been waiting for us to say, is unlike the X100V, we have stock, and you can buy it from us, and you will get it this year.
Oh yeah.
So I've been Tiffany.
I've been Johnny.
And this has been Wax Photo Video. If you want to see more like this, subscribe to our channel. We will catch you in the next video.
See you next time.